The galaxy stretched endless and silent around the small ship as it drifted toward a planet long forgotten on every star map. The human explorer had been traveling for weeks without meeting another voice, without seeing another ship, and his supplies were nearly gone. He had chosen this planet not out of curiosity but out of need, searching for fuel, water, or anything that could keep him alive for one more journey. From above, the world looked broken, a wasteland of jagged mountains and blackened valleys, as though fire and war had consumed it long ago. No signals came from its surface, no trace of life touched his sensors, and so he believed he had found nothing more than another dead rock at the edge of space. Yet something deep in him told him to land, to step onto the soil and search, even when every instinct told him there was nothing here but silence. His boots crunched against dust and shattered stone as he walked through the valley. The air was heavy, filled with smoke that never seemed to fade, and the sky above glowed faintly red as if the sun had been trapped behind a veil of ash. He saw ruins scattered across the landscape, the bones of towers and walls that hinted at a civilization that once lived here. They were old, worn down by storms, and so quiet that even his own breathing seemed too loud. As he pressed deeper into the valley, the silence grew heavier, almost alive, wrapping around him until he felt as though he were trespassing on something that still watched from the shadows. And then, from the corner of his vision, he saw movement. At first, he thought it was the shifting of stone or the reflection of light across the ruins, but then the sound came, a low, broken growl that rolled through the valley like thunder. He turned and froze. In the hollow of a collapsed temple lay a creature he had only seen in myths, a massive being covered in torn scales and streaks of strange, glowing blood. Its wings were folded against its body, broken and bent, and its chest rose and fell in ragged breaths that shook the ground. The human stared in shock. It was a dragon, though not like the ones of old Earth legends. This one's scales shimmered with colors that did not exist in nature, its eyes burned with alien fire, and strange markings carved themselves across its body as if written by the stars themselves. For a long moment, the human could not move. Every story told across the colonies warned that dragons were monsters, dangerous beasts born from chaos, bringers of death and destruction. To stand so close to one was to invite death. Yet the explorer did not lift his weapon. He only looked closer. The dragon was hurt, its massive body covered in wounds as though it had been hunted, and despite the sharp teeth and claws, he saw no rage in its eyes. He saw only pain. Slowly, carefully, he lowered his pack and pulled out water, his hands shaking as he stepped forward. The dragon growled again, its voice deep and trembling, and the air around it rippled with heat. One wrong move and it would be the end. Yet the man did not stop. He poured water into a small container and placed it just beyond the dragon's snout. For a moment, nothing happened. The beast's eyes narrowed, its breath steaming, and then slowly its tongue flicked forward, lapping the water with a sound that echoed strangely in the ruins. The man exhaled, relief flooding through him, and he stepped closer. He tore cloth from his uniform and began wrapping the wounds he could reach, careful not to press too hard. The dragon's body trembled under his touch, but it did not strike. Instead, it seemed to watch him, its gaze sharp and unreadable, as if it could not understand why he would help. The human whispered softly, words of comfort that meant nothing to the creature but steadied his own shaking voice. As he worked, the ground trembled again, though this time not from the dragon's breath. A distant rumble rolled through the valley, too steady, too controlled. He looked up, frowning, and his heart stopped. The sky was no longer empty. Lights appeared on the horizon, small at first, like falling stars, but as they grew brighter he realized they were ships. Dozens of them, then hundreds, all breaking through the atmosphere with precision. They spread across the sky like a net, their engines burning brighter than the sun, and their shadows swallowed the ruined valley in darkness. The explorer stumbled back, his eyes wide as the dragon lifted its head weakly and let out a sound that was not just a growl but a warning, a voice of recognition. The alien warships filled the heavens, their hulls covered in glowing symbols and weapons bristling from every side. They moved with perfect discipline, no hesitation, no confusion, as if they had been waiting for this exact moment. The human's comm device crackled to life, not with his own signal but with a broadcast that cut across every frequency. A voice spoke, cold and commanding, in a language he did not understand. But the message was clear when the dragon's eyes widened and a low rumble escaped its throat. The ships were not here by chance. They were here for the dragon. The man looked back at the creature, his hands still stained with its glowing blood, and in that instant he understood. His act of kindness had been seen, perhaps even felt, and now he was part of something far greater than he imagined. The alien fleet had come not to greet him but to demand the return of their prize, their guardian. Above him, the sky blazed with the light of warships, and below him, the dragon stared with ancient eyes that held both warning and trust. In that moment, the human realized he had stepped into a story older than himself, older than his people, and the choice he made now would decide not only his fate but the fate of worlds yet unseen. Lena sat on her living room floor, the glow on her wrist slowly fading but still faintly pulsing beneath her skin. Her breathing was shallow, her thoughts spinning. The 12 warships above her house hadn't moved since they arrived. No one else on Earth seemed to notice them. The news was silent, the skies were calm. It was like they were hidden, visible only to her. She hadn't left her house since the night before. Every time she peeked through the curtains, they were still there, suspended like silent judges. Her phone still didn't work. The TV showed only static. Her internet was dead. Yet her laptop, which had been off for months, now sat on her desk, quietly humming. She didn't know what else to do, so she turned it on again. The moment the screen lit up, a message appeared in clean white letters: "Prepare for contact." Before she could react, the lights dimmed and the laptop projected a shimmering figure in the center of her room. A man, or something close to one, stood there in glowing armor, his face hidden beneath a helmet that looked both ancient and futuristic. His voice was calm, deep, and emotionless. "You are Lena Morales of Earth." She didn't answer right away, but then nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's me. You have been chosen to represent your planet before the 12 houses of flame." "I didn't choose anything," Lena said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "I just helped an old man buy groceries." The figure tilted its head slightly. That old man was King Voronax, last of the Elder Dragons. A being of royal blood and forgotten fire. You showed him mercy. That act has activated an ancient pact between the houses. Lena blinked. "I didn't know he was a dragon." "Exactly," the figure replied. "That is why your action has meaning." The hologram vanished without a goodbye. The screen changed again. "Transport in 10 minutes. Be ready." A low hum filled the air, like the sound of a great engine waking up. Lena ran to her room, threw on a jacket, and grabbed her backpack, even though she had no idea what to bring for something like this. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the door. When she stepped outside, the night had returned, even though it was only 3 p.m. The sky was black, stars more visible than she'd ever seen them. A circle of soft blue light appeared in her backyard. With a breath she didn't realize she was holding, she stepped into it. Her body felt weightless, like the world had dropped away. Then, light, noise, motion. When her feet hit solid ground again, she wasn't on Earth. She stood in a vast metallic hall, towering with arched ceilings, lined with glowing symbols in languages she didn't understand. Ahead of her were 12 towering beings. Some humanoid, some scaled, some with wings, horns, or entirely made of energy. At the center was an empty chair. The moment she arrived, every head turned to her. A voice, cold and powerful, echoed through the chamber. "The human has arrived. The trial may begin." Lena swallowed hard. Trial. One of the beings, an armored figure with dark red scales and molten eyes, stood up. "You aided the exiled King Voronax. Do you deny it?" "No," she said. "He was just someone who needed help. That act, while simple to you, has awakened the flame accord. You are now bound to its terms. Earth is no longer hidden. You represent your species." Lena stepped forward, heart pounding, palms sweating. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know any of this existed until yesterday." A new voice spoke, softer, older. It came from a creature made of crystal and smoke. That is precisely why you were chosen. Only those who show kindness without reason may hold the accord. Another figure rose, sharp and angular like it was carved from obsidian. But can she be trusted? Humanity is known for war, greed, destruction. One kind act does not erase history. The debate continued. Some defended her, others demanded Earth be punished. Lena listened, overwhelmed, until finally she raised her voice. You're right. Humans aren't perfect. But neither are you. I saw your warships above my house. You threatened me. I was afraid. But I still came here because I wanted to understand. Because that old man told me my kindness mattered. If that's not enough, then maybe you're not as advanced as you think. The room fell silent. The dragons watched her, their glowing eyes unreadable. Then the central seat shimmered, and a new figure appeared. It was him. The old dragon. Voronax. No longer hunched or weak. He stood tall, powerful, his wings made of light and fire. She speaks truth, he said, his voice like thunder. Let the circle recognize her mercy. Lena stood frozen as every member of the 12 placed one hand over their chest, then bowed their heads. The voice from earlier returned. The accord is upheld. But consequences remain. She must now face what her world has hidden. The chamber darkened. A massive screen lit up behind the dragons, and what it showed made Lena's blood run cold. The valley was now a battlefield, though only one side had moved so far. Smoke and fire curled through the broken ruins as the dragon's breath faded into the air, leaving behind twisted wreckage of what had been the first wave of soldiers. Their screams had ended too quickly, swallowed by the roar of alien fire. The explorer stood with his back pressed against the dragon's scaled body, his heart pounding so loud he thought it might break his ribs. He had seen war, he had seen death, but nothing like this. The power that had erupted from the creature in its weakened state was beyond anything human technology could ever achieve. And yet, despite that display, the fleet above did not retreat. If anything, it seemed to tighten its grip, the massive ships shifting into perfect formation, ready to crush the valley under their combined might. The explorer wiped dust and sweat from his face, eyes darting to the dragon. Its head hung low, smoke rising from its maw, its strength clearly drained by the attack. He touched its scales again, his voice trembling. You can't fight them all, not like this. But the dragon's eye flicked to him, glowing faintly, filled with an ancient determination that made him feel both small and chosen at the same time. Another rush of images pressed into his thoughts, a hidden city made of crystal towers, winged beasts soaring through skies of fire, a war that stretched across countless worlds. The images ended in chains, cold, heavy chains, clamped around the dragon's body while the alien soldiers cheered. His breath caught in his throat as understanding filled him. This wasn't just a battle. This was a hunt, and they had hunted this creature for centuries. Above, a low vibration filled the air, so deep it rattled the stones beneath his boots. He looked up to see the underbellies of the warships glowing brighter, lines of light forming across their hulls. They were preparing to fire. His comm device screamed with static before the cold voice returned, harder than steel. Step away. Human interference will result in termination. He almost laughed, bitter and breathless. Interference? He hadn't even understood what he had stumbled into. And yet, here he was, branded an enemy of an empire he had never met. The dragon shifted beside him, forcing itself up on one claw, its broken wings dragging across the ground. Its tail lashed weakly, cracking stone, but its eyes never left the skies above. Again, the explorer felt that pressure in his head, clearer now, almost forming into words. He did not hear them with his ears but with his mind, ancient and echoing. Ride. His stomach dropped. He looked up at the beast's massive back, at the sharp ridges along its spine, and shook his head. No, that's impossible. I'll fall. I'll die before we even leave the ground. The dragon let out a growl that vibrated through his bones, not threatening but commanding. and for the first time he realized it was not asking. It was telling him what had to be done. The first blast struck. A beam of pure energy shot down from the fleet, slamming into the far end of the valley. The explosion tore through ancient stone, a wave of fire and dust blasting toward them. The human was thrown off his feet, coughing, ears ringing as rocks rained down around him. The dragon roared, raising its head defiantly, and unleashed another burst of its strange white-blue fire, catching one of the descending dropships midair. The craft exploded in a shower of burning metal, crashing into the ruins below. The sound was deafening, the light blinding, and yet more dropships continued to descend. The armada above was endless, and every moment the valley shrank under their shadow. Shaking, the explorer pushed himself to his feet. He looked at the dragon's massive shoulder, his mind screaming at him that this was madness. But his gut told him there was no choice left. He scrambled up the side of the beast, gripping the ridges of its scales as though climbing a mountain. The surface was warm, almost burning, but he clung on, pulling himself higher until he reached the space between its great wings. The dragon's muscles shifted beneath him, each breath like thunder. He braced himself just as the creature let out another roar and stretched its broken wings wide. The ground shook as the dragon pushed off with its powerful legs, leaping into the air with a force that rattled his teeth. The explorer's stomach lurched as the ground dropped away, the ruined valley shrinking into a blur beneath them. For one terrible moment, he thought the beast would crash back down, its wings too damaged to hold it aloft. But then, with a guttural growl, the dragon's wings snapped outward, catching the air in a violent surge. Pain shuddered through its body, yet it climbed higher and higher, breaking through the smoke, rising toward the storm of warships waiting above. The explorer clung desperately to the dragon's scales, wind tearing at his clothes, his lungs burning as thin air rushed past. The fleet loomed above them now, massive ships filling the sky like mountains of steel. Smaller fighter craft broke away from the armada, swooping down in tight formation to intercept. Their weapons flared, streaks of plasma cutting through the sky. The dragon twisted with unnatural grace, rolling its massive body as streams of energy missed by inches. Its fire blazed again, cutting through a squadron of fighters, their wreckage raining down like meteors. The explorer could barely breathe, his vision swimming from the force, but he could feel the rhythm of the dragon's movements, the raw fury of survival in every strike. And then, through the chaos, he noticed something strange. The warships were not firing at full strength. Their beams targeted the dragon but never unleashed their true power, never risked obliterating it. They wanted it alive. They would destroy the valley, burn the ruins, slaughter anything in their path, but not the creature he rode upon. That truth settled in his mind like a blade. If the dragon was this important, if it was this feared, then he was now tied to something that could unravel entire empires. As the fleet's fighters swarmed around them, the explorer gritted his teeth, gripping the dragon tighter. His fear was still there, gnawing at the edges of his mind, but beneath it burned something else, something stronger. Defiance. He had been a wanderer, a forgotten man on the edge of the galaxy, but now he had found purpose. He didn't know what this battle meant or why the Empire hunted the dragon so desperately, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would not let them take it. The sky had become a storm of fire and metal. Alien fighters swarmed like hornets, their plasma shots streaking past the dragon in glowing arcs, illuminating the endless darkness above. The human clung desperately to the ridges of the dragon's spine, every muscle in his body screaming from the effort of holding on. The wind ripped at his face, tearing tears from his eyes, and every time the dragon twisted to avoid a volley of plasma, he thought his hands would slip and he would fall to his death. Yet despite its injuries, despite the broken wing that bent at an unnatural angle, the dragon flew with impossible strength, its massive form cutting through the chaos like a blade. Its roar split the heavens, not only a sound but a challenge hurled at the fleet above, a declaration that it would not bow, not again. The explorer's heart hammered as he glanced down. The valley below was now unrecognizable, consumed in fire from the orbital bombardment. The ruins that had once whispered of forgotten civilizations were now craters of ash and molten stone. If he had hesitated, if he had remained on the ground, he would have been nothing more than dust among the rubble. His grip tightened on the dragon's scales as he forced himself to look back at the armada ahead. Hundreds of warships loomed in perfect formation, their size so great that each one could blot out the stars. Fighters darted like insects between them, relentless, countless. This was not a battle to be won. This was survival against the impossible. Yet even as despair curled in his chest, the dragon moved with fury and precision. Its jaws opened, and another torrent of white-blue fire spewed forth, carving a burning wound through the fleet of fighters. Ships spiraled out of control, exploding in showers of flame that painted the skies with fire. The explorer felt the heat even from his perch, felt the air tremble with each blast. He realized then that the beast was not just fighting, it was guiding him somewhere. He looked closer, scanning the fleet, and noticed a gap forming between two massive capital ships. It wasn't natural. The alien formation was tight, precise, every vessel locked into a pattern that allowed no mistakes. But there, in that one stretch of sky, the ships shifted too much, leaving an opening. The dragon surged toward it, ignoring the heavy fire that rained down around them. The explorer realized with dawning horror what this meant. The creature wasn't fleeing blindly. It knew. It remembered. And it was flying toward something that the aliens desperately wanted to prevent. His comm device crackled again, the harsh mechanical voice filled with urgency this time. Guardian must not escape. All forces, intercept. Destroy the human, if necessary. His stomach twisted. They had known he was there all along, known enough to call him out directly. He wasn't invisible in this war anymore. He was part of it, tied to the dragon's fate, and the Empire now saw him as an enemy to be erased. The dragon let out a guttural snarl and dove suddenly, its massive body spiraling downward. Plasma fire seared past, one shot grazing its wing and tearing scales free in a shower of sparks. The beast roared in agony, but it did not falter. The explorer pressed himself low against the dragon's back, every nerve on fire from the sheer force of the dive. His ears popped as the air screamed past, and his vision blurred from the pressure. They were heading not toward safety, but directly into the thick of the alien formation. Out of the swarm, 3 massive fighters broke away. Larger than the rest, their sleek hulls shimmered with shifting shields that bent the light itself. They moved with terrifying precision, each one locking its weapons on the dragon. The explorer gritted his teeth as beams of searing energy streaked past, each shot close enough to burn the air. The dragon twisted violently, banking hard left, then right, narrowly avoiding blasts that could have vaporized them both. With a roar, it spat fire at the nearest fighter, but the flames scattered harmlessly across its shields. These ships were different, stronger, designed for this hunt. The explorer's mind raced. He couldn't fight. He had no weapon, no plan. But then he remembered the vision the dragon had pressed into his mind back in the ruins. Fire, chains, war. Among the images had been something else, too. Crystal towers, glowing like stars. The memory had felt important, like a direction. Was that where the dragon was heading? If so, then every second mattered. He leaned close to its scales, almost shouting into the wind, though he knew the creature didn't need words. Don't stop. Keep going. We'll make it. The dragon answered with a roar that shook his bones, and its muscles coiled as it surged forward with renewed strength. The enemy fighters pressed closer, their weapons blazing, their shields shimmering. And then, with shocking speed, the dragon did the impossible. It rolled its entire body, twisting through the narrow gap between 2 warships so close that the explorer swore he could see the alien crews staring back through their windows in shock. Plasma fire erupted too late, scorching only empty space, while the dragon burst out the other side, leaving its pursuers scrambling to keep up. For the first time, the explorer felt a flicker of hope. Not victory, not safety, but the chance of escape. Yet that hope died quickly when the armada shifted. The massive capital ships began to close ranks, their guns swiveling, their beams charging with light. The voice in his comm device hissed with fury. Do not let the Guardian reach the gates. Fire at will. The explorer's blood went cold. The gates. What did that mean? He craned his neck, scanning the void ahead, and then he saw it. Far beyond the fleet, hidden behind their blockade, a glow shimmered in the darkness. Not a star, not a ship, but a structure unlike anything he had ever seen. It was vast, a ring of light stretching across space, its surface etched with runes that pulsed faintly as if alive. Energy rippled from it in waves that made his skin prickle. The gates. He knew it instantly, even without understanding. That was where the dragon was heading. That was why the fleet was here, why they hunted it so desperately. If the creature reached that place, something would happen, something the Empire feared more than anything else. The dragon roared, its voice echoing across the void, and with every beat of its wounded wings it drew closer to the glowing ring. The explorer held tight, his heart racing, torn between terror and awe. He didn't know what would happen if they made it to the gates, but he knew one thing for certain. The Empire would burn every star in this sector before letting them pass. And yet, despite the fear clawing at his chest, he whispered to himself, almost like a prayer. "We're going to make it. We have to." And as the first capital ship fired its full barrage directly at them, the dragon dove headlong into the storm, carrying him toward the destiny neither of them could escape. The barrage lit up the void like a false sunrise. Streams of plasma and beams of raw energy erupted from the capital ships, converging into a storm that no living thing should have been able to withstand. The human explorer buried his face against the dragon's scales, bracing for death, but the creature twisted with a speed that defied its massive size. Its wings beat the air with a thunderous force, propelling them into an impossible dive through the incoming fire. Explosions flared all around, shockwaves rattling his bones, and more than once the heat of near misses seared his skin. Yet somehow, impossibly, they pushed forward, alive through a curtain of death meant to erase them from existence. The dragon's roar shook the stars, a sound of fury and defiance that echoed not only in the explorer's ears but in his mind. It was more than a cry of rage, it was a vow. With every beat of its wounded wings, every spray of blood that tore free from its injuries, the beast forced itself onward, driven by something greater than survival. Ahead, the shimmering gates grew larger, their runes glowing brighter, pulsing with an energy that resonated in the human's chest like the beating of a colossal heart. He couldn't understand what they were, but he felt their pull, their promise of something beyond the reach of the Empire. Behind them, the pursuing fleet pressed harder. The three shielded hunters, the elite fighters, slashed through the void with mechanical precision, their weapons carving streaks of fire across the darkness. Every volley drove closer, every blast shaving away at the dragon's strength. One shot struck its flank, tearing through flesh and scale, and the beast let out a cry of pain that reverberated deep into the explorer's bones. He gritted his teeth, rage and helplessness boiling in his chest. He had no weapons, no way to fight back, no way to protect the creature that had spared him when it could have killed him in that ruined valley. All he could do was cling to its back and whisper broken words into the rushing wind. "Hold on. Please hold on. Just a little further." Then something shifted. As the dragon roared again, the explorer felt that strange pressure in his mind return, stronger now, more insistent. Images flooded his thoughts, not just fragments this time, but entire visions. He saw armies of dragons soaring across burning skies, their fire clashing against fleets of alien ships. He saw humans standing beside them, wielding weapons of light, their banners raised high. He saw betrayal, chains, blood, and finally the moment the Empire struck the final blow, scattering both humans and dragons to the edges of the galaxy. The gates appeared again in the vision, blazing with power, and he understood, this place was not just a relic. It was a refuge, a weapon, a key. The explorer's breath caught as he realized the truth. The Empire wasn't just afraid of the dragon reaching the gates, they were terrified of what would awaken if it did. And now, with every passing second, they were drawing closer to that awakening. His comm device crackled once more, the alien voice distorted, desperate now. "Human, abandon the Guardian. Step away, and you may yet live. Do not let it cross. Do not let the past rise again." But the man only clenched his fists tighter against the dragon's scales, his eyes blazing with resolve. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just one man who had shown kindness to a dying creature. But somehow, that single act had carried him into the center of a war older than he could comprehend. He whispered, "No. If you fear what's behind those gates, then that's exactly where we're going." The dragon, as if hearing his resolve, bellowed once more and unleashed a torrent of fire straight at the lead hunter ship. The white-blue flame struck its shields, and though the barrier held, cracks of light spread like spiderwebs across its surface. The alien craft faltered, its weapons flickering, and in that instant the dragon seized its chance. With a sudden burst of speed, it barreled through the gap, slamming its massive body into the ship's flank. Metal screamed as the hunter vessel spun wildly out of control, colliding with another fighter in a burst of fire that illuminated the void. The other two hunters pressed harder, their weapons cutting deep gouges into the dragon's hide. Blood spilled freely now, glistening in the starlight, and the explorer could feel the creature's body trembling beneath him. It wouldn't last much longer. But the gates were close. So close he could see the intricate patterns of light running along their inner rim, swirling as if preparing for something. The runes pulsed brighter and brighter, beating like a drum, as if responding to the dragon's approach. The capital ships moved into position, their weapons aligning for one final strike. Energy gathered in massive cannons, glowing so brightly that the void itself seemed to shudder with their power. The explorer's chest tightened. If those beams struck, there would be nothing left of him or the dragon but dust scattered across space. But even as terror clawed at him, he refused to let go. He pressed his hand against the dragon's scales, his voice breaking with urgency. "You can do this. Just one more push. We're almost there." The dragon's eyes blazed like twin suns, and with a roar that shook the heavens, it summoned the last of its strength. Its wings tore through the void, carrying them forward with a speed that blurred the stars. The alien beams fired, colossal streaks of light screaming across the black, but the dragon wove between them with impossible precision, each near miss burning hotter than fire. One final blast struck its tail, tearing it apart in an explosion of scales and blood, but still it flew, unstoppable, unyielding. And then, they reached it. The gates filled their vision, so vast and radiant that they seemed to swallow the universe. The runes flared with blinding light as the dragon roared and hurled itself forward, carrying its rider into the very heart of the ring. The moment they crossed, the explorer felt the world shatter. Light consumed everything, not searing but endless, infinite. He heard voices, countless voices, whispering in a chorus, words he could not understand yet somehow felt. The dragon's roar joined the sound, not in pain but in triumph. Behind them, the alien fleet's weapons fired again, but it was too late. The light of the gates surged outward like a tidal wave, swallowing the fire, the ships, the very void itself. And as the explorer clung to the dragon, his mind spinning with terror and awe, he realized that whatever lay beyond those gates, they had just crossed into a place the Empire feared more than death. The true story was only beginning. The light faded slowly, peeling back like the last veil of a dream, and the human explorer blinked against the glow until shapes began to form around him. The first thing he noticed was the silence. Not the silence of deep space, not the mechanical hum of ships or the constant threat of gunfire. It was deeper, almost alive, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. He found himself on the dragon's back still, his hands clutching its scales, but they were no longer in the void. They floated in a vast expanse filled with stars brighter than he had ever seen, yet somehow arranged in patterns that felt deliberate, purposeful. Around them, colossal figures drifted in the distance, neither alive nor dead, stone-like titans carved in the shapes of dragons, frozen in eternal flight. Their eyes glowed faintly with golden fire, and though they did not move, he could not shake the feeling that they were watching. The dragon beneath him groaned low, its massive body trembling. The wounds from the battle still burned across its flesh, blood trailing into the void like crimson smoke, but here, the air itself seemed different. With every breath the beast took, the bleeding slowed, and the shimmer of light stitched faint threads across its wounds. The explorer felt it too, his burns and cuts, the pain in his lungs from the searing atmosphere of the battle, fading as if unseen hands were tending to them. He exhaled shakily, the weight of survival pressing down on him. Against all odds, they had made it through. But relief was a fragile thing. In the distance, thunder cracked, not from weapons, but from the gates behind them. He turned and saw them, still glowing, still pulsing, and beyond them, the Empire. The fleet had not followed, but he could see them lingering just outside, like predators circling a barrier they dared not cross. Their massive ships held formation, weapons ready, but none advanced. The comm device on his belt remained silent now, though he could almost feel the hatred pressing against him through the void. They would wait. They would watch. And when the chance came, they would strike again. The dragon shifted, lifting its head weakly, and the golden glow of its eyes fixed on the strange horizon ahead. Without warning, the pressure returned in the explorer's mind. Stronger this time, clearer. It wasn't just images or feelings, it was almost like words now, a voice older than stars threading through his thoughts. Chosen, not by chance. By will. By kindness. His breath caught, and his grip tightened on the scales. Chosen for what? He whispered. The dragon's gaze flicked toward the stone titans, and again the vision struck. He saw humans, thousands of them, standing in this same place, their ships lined in proud rows, their banners unfurled beside the dragons. They had fought together, once, not as beasts and masters but as allies. He saw victories, worlds liberated, but also betrayals, battles lost, chains forged. And then he saw a final stand, humans and dragons sealing something behind the gates, ensuring it could never fall into the Empire's hands. That was the last memory before silence. The explorer's stomach twisted as the truth unfolded in him. This place was not only a refuge. It was a vault. A sanctuary. Perhaps even a weapon forged by a bond now forgotten. And the Empire, for all its cruelty and power, feared above all else what would happen if that bond was rekindled. The dragon shifted again, groaning as it spread its wings. Its body trembled, but its wounds glowed faintly brighter as the strange healing light flowed through it. Slowly, with deliberate effort, it rose higher into the starlit void. The explorer clung tight, but his fear was tempered now with wonder. For the first time since this began, he felt not like prey, but like someone standing at the edge of something vast, something waiting to be awakened. Then, movement stirred among the stone titans. He almost thought it a trick of his weary eyes, but no, their eyes glowed brighter, one by one, until the void was filled with golden fire. The silence deepened, heavy and suffocating, and then a voice boomed through the expanse, not in sound but in thought. Countless minds speaking as one. The bond is remembered. The explorer gasped, his hands shaking, as visions cascaded again. He saw armies rising, the empire burning, the dragons freed from chains. But he also saw himself, alone, small, fragile, standing as the bridge between two worlds. The dragon roared then, a cry that carried not just through the void but into the hearts of the stone titans. One by one, they stirred, their massive forms shifting as cracks of light tore through their stone shells. The explorer's mouth went dry as the impossible happened before his eyes. They were not statues. They were slumbering giants. Ancient dragons, entombed in stone until the bond was restored. And now, because of one act of kindness, they were awakening. The empire outside the gates must have seen it too, because suddenly the void beyond erupted with movement. The fleet stirred, weapons glowing brighter, ships shifting into assault formations. Though they did not cross the gates, their intent was clear. They could not allow what was waking to rise. The explorer's comm device crackled violently, and the voice returned, sharp with terror and fury. Human, you do not understand. Stop this. You will doom us all. But the explorer only stared into the endless glow of the awakening dragons, his chest rising with a resolve he did not know he possessed. He whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. No. Maybe I'll save us all. The void trembled as the first of the great stone shells shattered, revealing a dragon so vast it dwarfed even the Empire's warships. Its wings unfurled, spreading fire and shadow across the stars, and its eyes burned like twin suns. Others followed, one after another, the sound of their roars building into a chorus that shook the very air of existence. The explorer clutched his dragon's scales, his heart pounding with awe and fear, as he realized what had been unleashed. The balance of power had shifted. The empire outside the gates was still strong, still vast, but they had awakened something it had hoped to bury forever. The war that was coming would be unlike any before. And at its center, a lone human explorer and the wounded dragon he had chosen to save. As the dragons rose into the light, their roars echoing like a storm across the stars, the explorer whispered the truth that chilled him even as it filled him with hope. This was not the end of his story. It was only the beginning.